No one protects homes and reputations like James Hardy, and builders agree.
Hardy Siding and Trim allow us to build beautiful homes that weather the test of time. And in our business, durability means everything.
Learn more at jameshardy.com/build.
Plato's Closet wants to help you kick off your summer in style. Whether you have plans for the beach, mountains, concerts, or wherever, Plato's Closet has the sundresses, shorts, tanks, sandals, tees, and styles you need for up to 70% off regular retail prices. And if you need help to fund those adventures, sell us your items for cash. Adventure awaits this summer, and it starts with cool styles at Plato's Closet. With 14 locations in the Atlanta area, find your nearest location at platoscloset.com.
You love podcasts, the stories, the laughs, the unexpected turns. But when this episode ends, the silence starts. Not anymore. Audiobooks.com turns that silence into your next great adventure. With over 450,000 titles, from bestsellers to hidden gems, your love for listening just found its new best friend. And because you already know the joy of audio, we're giving you 3 free audiobooks to start your journey. Imagine your favorite podcast, now with unlimited episodes. That's audiobooks.com. Keep the story going. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. Because for podcast lovers like you, the end of an episode is just the beginning. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.
Hey, it's Storyworthy. Today on the show, comedian Dawn Brodey talks about the last raccoon and her houseboat in Minnesota.
The garbage can is on the boat, but it's like bungee corded to the railing, so it's like it's hanging out kind of over the back. And I'm thinking, I gotta get this raccoon out of here, poor thing. And I open the door, and I look in, and everything below that raccoon's eyes has been ripped off. And its jaw is hanging off its face like a toenail, Christine. I can see the bones of its nostrils and a couple of back teeth sticking up from its back. And I jump back and I slam the door and I'm just running in place, Christine, because I'm thinking, oh my fuck, that was the scariest, grossest fucking thing I've ever seen. And it was gory and it was horrible and it was horrifying. And then the other feeling surging through me is a deeper empathy than I had before, because this poor fucking thing is suffering even more than I thought. It is 105 degrees, this hot, black, sun-scorched garbage can with its face hanging off. I'm like, what do I do?
Today on the show, comedian Dawn Brodey talks about the last raccoon and her houseboat in Minnesota.
It's Dawn Brodey, and you're listening to Storyworthy.
Welcome to Storyworthy. My name is Christine Blackburn, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Whether you're a longtime fan of the show of over 14 years or you're a brand new listener, welcome to Storyworthy. I hope you guys enjoyed the show last week with storyteller Julia Lechner. Julia is making quite a name for herself here in Los Angeles as a very good storyteller. She actually won Story Smash. Dawn, you're my guest today, Dawn. Dawn, you won Story Smash how many times? 3, 4?
I think it's 4, although I tied once. So I tied once. So that's, I feel like then I'm going to take a solid 5 on that one, Christine. I think it's 5.
Oh my God.
I think it's fucking 5. Yeah.
My God.
High 5, man.
Unbelievable. Well, Julia Lechner won a couple of weeks ago, and she was so funny. And last week she told a story about how she's very fast to fight.
I heard it.
Oh, you heard it?
I heard it and I was dying. I was dying because I'm from Wisconsin and we also have like, we want to fight, but different than that. I was on every word of her story. She was so funny.
Yeah. Julia's great. She has great choices of words and just a great girl. So go back, you guys, listen to Julia Lechner last week, but not today. Stay with me now because I'm with Dawn Brodey. You hear her talking. She's been on this show several times. And like we said, every time you've played Story Smash, you win.
No,
and I don't.
It's the cookies.
I mean, yes, it's your stories. Yes, it's your talent. But you walk in with confidence, like Like, you're going to win. Like, that's it. Like, I don't know what somebody would have to do to beat you, but you're very good on stage. You really do, Dawn. And that's why you're a regular at Flappers and some other places. You've opened for Jay Leno. I mean, you know how to hold the room and everybody's eyes are on you. Is that true?
Oh, that fills my sails to hear you say that. I hope that's true. I certainly strive for that. But the truth, I think, is that I am just like I think a lot of folks in this town, bless our hearts, we are sort of attention desperate babies of the family. At least that's me.
No, me too. I could have been on fire and I would not have been. Yeah, nobody would have known I was there.
Absolutely. And huge talkers. So like I have a huge family and everyone talks at the same time. And so when you have something that either you want to contribute or you want to comment on, you really like merging in New York City. You just kind of gotta hit you gotta go for it. And when I find myself in polite society where I don't have to elbow someone in the throat to get a word in, meaning that people are actually saying, go ahead, Dawn, tell a story. We'd all really like to hear it. Yeah. I get like, I just get to talk and no one's going to stop me or tell me it's not my turn anymore. And I think that looks like confidence.
No, here's what I'm going to tell you what it is. You have something to say and therefore there's an urgency to your set. And I think that's what comedians really have to have. A comedian, when I see a comedian get up there, and the first thing they say is, give it up for your host. And then the second thing they say is, how are you guys doing tonight? I immediately say to myself, they don't have anything to say.
Right.
Because they're trying to get like cheap laughs at the top.
Yeah.
Like you got to come on at 100%.
Yeah. Or it's like a reset. Like they're trying to sort of clean the slate so that it's like, okay, let's let the energy that was here go. And now I'm going to start a whole new energy, which I think has a place if that's really what you're into. But I agree with you. Generally, as an audience member, it feels to me like a slow start. Like I'm trying to think of something to say or wasting time,
Right. Or you're wasting time. But when you come on stage, you bound on the stage and you've got something to say. You grab the microphone, you take it out of the stand and let's go. And the audience loves it. You're very talented and you really are accomplished. I think I wrote to you a few months ago after I saw this movie on Netflix and I was like, holy shit, there's Don Brodey in the movie Cruel Heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a good movie.
Yeah, man. And that whole team that made the movie Cruel Hearts, it's written and directed by a guy named Paul Osborne, who is phenomenal. And it is the second movie I did with him, or it was the first of two movies I did with him. He writes and then directs these just visually interesting, complex characters, but not intentionally complicated. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cruel Heart, amazing cast, incredible. And then he did another movie. It's in the festivals right now that I have a huge role in. Called Fluorescent Beast. And
oh my God, he brought you along on another project.
Do you know what, Christine? It's so nice. Not only he brought me along, he called me. I will never forget this because I had a baby literally a week. I think I had my baby home for a week and I was out at a bar because I am from Wisconsin. And, it was a daytime sort of thing. And her car seat is sitting next to me and I got a call from Paul Osborne. And I answered it and he told me, I wrote a role for you in my next movie and it just got greenlit. And, I know you just had a baby, like just had a baby.
Yeah.
But if you want the role, it's yours. And if you don't tell me now, I'll start auditioning. And, for anyone in the arts,
you say yes.
You say yes. But as a, and I don't want to sound too gendered and all this, but as a woman who just had a baby in LA, to have a director,
all, your uterus hasn't even gotten back to its size.
Right. Word. And my uterus was about to go through a real ringer because I had a hysterectomy. I missed the table read for this movie because I had complications later and I had to have an emergency hysterectomy. I mean, Christine, it was nuts. But I'm fine. I'm totally fine.
Was that crushing for you? Did you want another child?
That part of it was not crushing for me because one and done was a perfectly,
Me too.
totally right. And I had her for almost 40. I was 39 when she was born. So it wasn't like I was awaiting a long reproductive life after that. That being said, I think the thing with choice is that it's a freedom. It's a valuable thing. And so whether or not your longing coincides with your choice, when a choice is removed, it can break your heart in ways that you were sort of...
Well, exactly.
There's also an element, let me tell you, with the uterus became such a big deal in the years to follow, because I recall, this is in my stand-up, it's funnier than the version I'm going to tell you now, but after Dobbs and the repeal of Roe v. Wade, I remember seeing a tweet that said, "No uterus, ? No opinion, !" And I was like, oh, good. What a burden. I don't have to think about any of these complicated, reproductive issues. But
that's very shocking to get an emergency hysterectomy. Yeah. Did you have, real quick, and we're going to move on, but did you have your baby C-section or regular?
I had a regular vaginal birth, but
that was fortunate.
Which was fortunate. And then I went home. I was fine. But 24 hours after I got home, I had 105
temperature.
Yeah. And I was delirious.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
And if I had been I was fortunate. My husband was home and he kind of had his wits about him. But, you have a baby home for 2 days. You're already over. You don't have sleep and you're a mess. But I remember my doctor, when I went to the emergency room, she put her hand on me and she said, "I'm worried about you."
Wow.
And I was like,
was it sepsis? What was it?
Yeah. It was, I'm sure there's the technical term, but the placenta, that is the part that goes away. Your uterus obviously stays, but the placenta that grows around, that's where you eat and put in your shampoo. Exactly. Very valuable. And the idea is like when the balloon, it's like a balloon. And when that balloon pops, it comes out after the baby, it's gone. So in my case, the placenta grew in through the uterine wall. The best visual that I've had for it is like, if you've ever seen like a dandelion that grows out of the freeway, where you see the like concrete looks like Thor's hammer, but it's just a little plant is growing up out of there.
Yeah.
It was like that. The placenta just like found a root path somehow. And I'm so grateful that whatever was going on there didn't compromise my child, but
is that like a hernia then?
I don't know if it's related to a hernia. What I know is that when that placenta, though, after the baby is born, the placenta dies. It's dead tissue. Yeah. And so now I essentially had dead tissue interwoven and had, grown into my uterus. So once they couldn't scrape, they couldn't get that dead tissue out, they had to remove the whole thing.
You could have died.
Yeah, girl. It was close.
Holy cow. Isn't that interesting? You think like, well, look around. Look at all the people. Childbirth. How hard could it be? Just go out in a field. And then afterward, you could have serious complications like you did.
Absolutely. No, I'm one of them gals. Listen, in the modern age, I would have been told to go wait out in the parking lot too. You know what I mean? Like, because truly, even though my child had already been born, they performed a DNC. Because a DNC is essentially to evacuate your uterus, to evacuate whatever's in your uterus. And in this case, it wasn't a child. It was a bunch of dead placenta. You know what I mean? But probably had it been a different state and a different time, they wouldn't have been able to do that. And it would have.
Well, thank God. Was this your obstetrician who does this sort of a thing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, thank God you had that person in your life.
Girl. Yeah.
And you have been doing stand-up for a long, long time. I know you're from Minnesota. Like you said, you got those roots. And you've performed here in Los Angeles everywhere. A Comedy Store, Laugh Factory, Ice House, everywhere. And then, like I said, you have been an actress. You were in Pretty Little Liars. Yeah. Days of Our Lives. You mean the soap opera?
Yes. Oh, my God.
What were you in a soap opera? I want to know.
I was an intimidating prison inmate. And I and it was just one day. I think I had 3 lines and I was there to intimidate someone who was trying to use the phone.
We'll share.
And
That's hilarious. What fun, isn't it?
It's so fun. I mean, it's one of the things I love about living in LA, man. Like,
acting is amazing.
Acting's amazing.
It's like the gold. It's like the gold at the end of all the auditions and all the bullshit. Yeah. You get one role, 3 lines, and that can pump you up for years.
For sure. Well, and especially Days of Our Lives, because, I grew up in the middle of nowhere, on a cornfield with with the 3 channels and stuff. And so especially to be on one of those like institutional soap operas.
Yeah, totally. Was that the Luke and Laura one?
No, I wasn't keeping up at the time and I can't remember what the plot line was, but it was around the time that like Orange is the New Black was like the biggest show. So they were all sort of doing women's prison. Women's
prisons were so hot.
Exactly. And I happened to look scary.
Chain gang, forget it.
I'm a little tall. I have tattoos. They were like, she's the one.
And then in the last few years, you have been hosting the weekly podcast, HILF. History I'd Like to Fuck. And I honestly listened to every episode. I've learned so much. The latest episode was about Amelia Earhart, who I've dressed as for Halloween a couple of times.
Oh, you're a ringer.
Yeah, I got the goggles and the head thing. I love it.
Nice.
And then you've also done shows on freak shows. I think I was on that.
You were my guest. Yeah.
Crusades, Frankenstein, all of these events that we just forget about. Also people, you did the one, some of the stylish people. Who was the guy that really stylish man?
Oscar Wilde.
Right. So interesting. Steph, you hear these names, you don't know what the heck it's about. And you're not about to look it up in a dictionary or like on Google because who wants to just read about Wikipedia, whatever. So you get in there and you use the language and the slang or whatever, like the way we talk now, but you're talking about hundreds of years ago and you make it tangible. You make us see like who, Cleopatra was, you make us see who these people really were. And it's just interesting, man.
Oh, thanks, man. I tell you, HILF, History I'd Like to Fuck. It is my passion. I was a theater history major in college. So even when I graduated from college, in order to maintain my double major, I had to do a project that like included both. So I wrote a play about a real historical pirate. And so my whole really like professional life has often been a marriage of authentic history, well-researched history and how it sort of holds hands with entertainment, with accessibility. And I love it so much. Then
you actually walk the walk, man, or walk the talk or whatever it is, because you went to Italy and you really looked into the Mount Vesuvius. Was that the one, Mount Vesuvius, that rained down all the ash? And you have all these pictures from your trip. I mean, and how fascinating was that for you to see this stuff in real life?
Absolutely stunning. And it's one of those things with history. I find that people have an association. If you say history to someone, perhaps they do picture things like ruins in Italy, and they think surely, or Greece. Exactly. You were talking ancient history. You were talking thousands of years ago. And I often am, and that's perfectly within bounds. But also, history is what you ate for breakfast, right? So I tend to not get any less sort of gobsmacked at times by the history that I can still sort of smell,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because like you look at like the O.J. Simpson, there's a whole new thing on him or whatever. Like, yeah, that's recent history. But then you'll put it into context in HILF. Like, you guys think O.J. Simpson was bad. You should see what this guy did, like Pol Pot or, like these really broad subjects you will address. And it's just damn interesting. Nonfiction, always more interesting than fiction. No reason to listen to a fake podcast when you can hear about real stories and actually have a little bit of knowledge. Take it home, say to your family member, hey, did you know that whatever? Oh, I have one for you, Don.
Can't wait.
Okay. I've been doing this on stage when I host. I've been talking about, I say to the audience, hey, you guys, listen, if you need to use the crapper at any time, just get up and go do that. And then they look at me and I say, well, you want me to say restroom or lavatory? But wait a minute. Canadian inventor Thomas Crapper came up with the flush toilet, and that's why we call it the crapper.
Yeah. Isn't it great?
Did you know that?
I had heard that, and I had also heard his first name was John, which is why we call it the John. I love it. I mean, it doesn't. I think it's so great, but you totally hooked on the thing, I think, which is why it's the thing that snaps people's heads up with history, is because people already know stories and they love stories. You tell, this is a story about a girl who gets lost in the woods, or this is a story about a guy who falls into a butt, and you're like, okay, fascinating. But you go, and it really happened.
Yeah. And
you catch the physiological, their eyes snap up and they look at you differently when they know you're telling them something quote unquote true.
100% agree. I 100% agree. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's cool about HILF is you just don't go into serial killers, because honestly, that gets boring, because I don't care about the people as much. You know what I mean? They were murderers. I don't care as much. But when you're talking about leaders, you're talking about regimes, then it's like, oh my God, really? Or if you talk, you think about how many Russians have been killed in World War II, how many were killed just right now. Right now, how many have been dead in the Ukrainian war? I mean, Russia, that could be the whole damn podcast.
Girl, you are
so
singing.
Much fascinating.
Then the episode I am recording today that will be coming out next on HILF is called How to Start a War. And I'm with a historian named Michael Trapani, who has spent years research, because World War II is a big wad of yarn. You can go into the South Pacific, and it's a global war that lasted years. But he specifically focused on how it started, and it's so fucking fascinating, Christine, because I remember, Americans especially, we go, oh, World War II started when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Or we say, oh, World War II started when the Germans invaded Poland. And then we kind of go, and then everything happened after that. And really focusing on the years and months leading up to the invasion of Poland.
Yeah.
How tenuous it was, how nervous Hitler and Goebbels and Goering were, how close they were to just being told, slapped on the head and told, no, go fuck yourself. But they weren't. And it's like this tense story of just like, when are we going to get these fucks? Knowing, of course, we don't get these fucks. They rise to power and perpetrate the worst crime humans have ever done. It's
and
insane.
People don't even know that Hitler was elected. People don't even know that.
He was elected a lot. This fucking guy forced elections many times. That's why
they don't understand Donald Trump and what danger he brings, because they don't even realize this is what happened in Germany.
Well, the Nazi Party was banned in Germany in 1927, and 5 years later, he's chancellor with absolute power.
Is that right?
That's fucking interesting, man.
Yeah.
The Germans banned Nazis because they were fucking scary, man. Because, Hitler and the Nazis had perpetrated the beer hall putsch, and Hitler was thrown in jail, and everyone was kind of like, okay, so we caught him. We find out they're nasty, and we put him in jail, and he was supposed to go to jail for 5 years, but he was paroled after 9 months because we don't want to make the Nazis too mad. Let's try to appease. I mean, it's right? It's crazy. History is fucking nuts.
Amazing. When you did your education, when you got your schooling, did you have to focus on a certain history?
For certain, at times, but I was technically a history minor. And so to satisfy the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, go Gophers, their minor requirements, I had to go in depth on a few different subjects. So they would say you have to have 3 different geographical areas, 4 different time periods sort of deal. So I would focus as much as I could. I did a lot on medieval Europe. That was a huge part of my focus. And then my other was colonial America. So I kind of...
And we're going to get onto your story. By the way, the topic today, you bring forth the topic, The Last Raccoon, which I don't even know what's going to happen, but I do know that a raccoon killed my cat, Stan. They had a fight in the backyard. Raccoon won.
Oh, R.I.P. Stan.
That's what I know about raccoons. But before we get to your story, do you think knowing the history that you know and like having this breadth of knowledge makes you appreciate your life and your family even more?
God, that's a good question. Yes, 100%. In part because I've always seen whatever history I'm researching to an extent like the history of you as an individual. Meaning, I think it's easy when you're like, I don't understand that part of history, this, that. You think, well, you don't have to look too much further than your own life to say, I remember when I was a child and what I thought when I was a child.
Yeah.
And you look at your parents and their age and you can see when I was younger, I thought these things. When I am older, I might feel something different. And the tides of a larger history do something similar. I mean, when I look, for example, at colonial American history, I do look at it in a certain childlike phase. This is a country learning to walk. This, and the Civil War is like middle school. This is a child learning about conflict when your friend group breaks up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in World War II, we entered World War II like a young, strong man.
Yeah.
We were young,
ass.
we were strong, and we had overcome just enough, but we hadn't really gone through that much. But we were physically able to do. And now we have a certain middle-aged, in this way that we think we have an ancient history and we conceive, young. I feel like in that way, I do occasionally pull back and look at my life and see where I am on a much larger spectrum. Mm-hmm. Times that gives me great peace. Mm-hmm. And at times it plunges me into the depths of anxiety, of course, because being a tiny piece of something big can feel like insignificance unless you love the machine.
Yeah. Wow. Big words. Well, you keep it up because I think you're really helping and teaching a lot of people. People are learning and laughing at your podcast. The guests you have on are always very funny. They're always just like, what? And then you say, girl, let me tell you something. And then they're like, what? It's just really funny because the guest that you have on is generally speaking from the point of view that we all are listening.
I've never heard that. Yeah, I hope so. Well, come back. Will you be a guest again?
Of course I will. Of course I will.
Yes.
Okay. One more thing, and then we're going to get to your story. I wanted to mention that my brother was a huge American history buff. He loved the Civil War. He was a huge Civil War buff. And when we were little, he would sit on my stomach and read from Civil War books to me.
Wow.
And he wouldn't let me up.
What a guy.
Or in the alternative, he'd say, if you let me read to you for 10 minutes, I'll give you ice cream, because he would buy his own ice cream because he sold Bub's daddy at school, bought it for 5 cents, sold it for 10 cents, had a little business going, buy the half gallon of ice cream and then parse it out to me and my sisters if we would listen to Civil War history.
Ooh, is he single or like, where's he at?
He is single, but it's like
ice cream and history. I love it.
Marched into Atlanta and it's like, shut up. What are you talking about? The bloodiest day of the war was at Antietam. And like, I remember, and then when I was a kid, because I grew up in Pittsburgh, my father would pack all of us into the country squire, and we'd head east on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and we would vacation at Gettysburg.
Oh, yeah. Hot.
Oh, come on.
No, I'd fucking love it. Are you kidding me?
I was a kid. Yeah. My mom's like, get out of the car, honey. Go play around on the
Yeah, look at all these dusty old gravestones. Yay.
My dad would say, come on, kids, let's get a slave burger and a Lincoln lemonade.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Well, no, I've been doing that in stand-up because my kid went to Disneyland 6 times last year.
Whoa.
6 times in 1 year. And I went to Gettysburg. So there's just a difference in how
Tell me about it.
All right, you guys, we're going to get to Dawn's story in 1 second. But before we do, I wanted to remind you to please listen to My Life in 3 Songs. My Life in 3 Songs is a show that I created. I talk to comedians about the 3 songs in their life that have impacted them. Not necessarily their favorite songs, but songs that really made a difference in their life and shows you a glimpse of maybe where they grew up. So please check it out, mylifein3songs.com. And also you can find the show over on Spotify at My Life in 3 Songs. It's exclusively on Spotify because we do listen to the music. So you guys, please check it out. I need the story-worthy audience to go over to My Life in 3 Songs. come on, guys, get behind me. I'm your favorite independent podcast producer / Don Brodey. But the point is, I need your help. All right, you guys, she's here right now. You hear her talking. Don Brodey, what a talent. What a talent. She's an actress and a comedian. And then, like we've been talking about, she's got this deep interest in history, and she brings it into her performances and what she does day to day. So it's just fascinating. You guys can learn a lot more over at donbrodey.com. And that's Brodey, Brodey. Head over to donbrodey.com. And folks, wherever you are, please put your hands together for the very talented Don Brodey.
Oh, thank you so much, Christine. I love your podcast so much. And yeah, this is my third time on. The first time I told you a story about when I used to live on a houseboat on the Mississippi River and took a trip down the river. And then the last time I told you a story from history about George Washington and the Whiskey Rebellion.
George Washington. And you want to marry George Washington.
Oh, I do. That guy's made of dicks. And I named my daughter, her middle name is Washington. So yeah, no, I'm a huge fan. But this time I thought, I really want to bring something special. So this is a story from my life that happened while I was living aboard a houseboat on the Mississippi River in St. Paul, Minnesota. I lived aboard a boat there year round for almost a decade, just about 9 years.
And this is a boat that moves.
Actually, there were two boats. Yeah, the first boat I used to take out all the time on weekends and also took ultimately on a huge trip, 1,800 miles down the Mississippi River from St. Paul to the Gulf of Mexico. Then I moved aboard a second houseboat, and this boat did not move. It floated, but it was permanently moored. It had to be tugged around, right? Because it was made of steel, 2 floors, big open decks that wrapped around both floors, surrounded by windows. Absolutely gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
And it was an old 1969 custom houseboat that we had found, frankly, rusting and had remodeled and lived aboard. And it was absolutely amazing. And it is actually on that boat, Toad Hollow, the big steel boat, that this story takes place. And I call this story The Last Raccoon. Because long before I lived on a boat, my whole life, I have had a disproportionate number of injured and wayward animals come to me. I mean, for lack of a better word, granted, I go to them, and sometimes I do go through crazy things to get them. But I'm talking, and anyone can save a cat and a dog. I feel like, any asshole can feel the empathy necessary to like save a puppy. You know what I mean? But like I have, and bless them, I've saved my share of cats and dogs. But I'm talking about like pigeons, mice, rats. I've stopped traffic to save a turtle. I've driven a little shoebox full of ducks through a thunderstorm.
A duck?
Driving around debris to get injured little ducklings to a fucking, I mean, and it started as childhood. These animals, they either walk up to me hobbled with just a wing dragging, or I hear them, and once I've recognized that this is an animal in trouble, I'm fucked. It's fucking done. I will lose my job. I will go into debt. It's too much. And the thing is, too, that's important to know is I know these animals that I go through hell to get are not necessarily going to live, because I often take them to, it was the same place called the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center in Roseville, Minnesota. I was on a first name fucking basis with these people. And I would always follow up after I dropped the animal off, how to do. And most of the time they were like, it died. And I'm like, okay, but I'd still save these fucks. And I'd be thinking, why am I doing this? These things gonna probably fucking die. And I realized that I wasn't necessarily trying to save them. I was trying to ease their suffering. I was doing all of this because I'm seeing something suffering and I couldn't walk away. Right?
And that's why there are wildlife refuges, because they do want to help. My niece is a veterinarian, and she worked at one in Malibu, and she put like a little popsicle splint on a mouse. You know what I mean? Like they want to help every creature. I
think it is a real elevated humanity. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I think because who can't understand why you would look at it and be like, what the fuck are we wasting resources? And these animals are part of a food chain, you idiot. Right. Like they die out there and somebody eats them. Like, this is fine. It doesn't matter. I can't explain to you why my heart suddenly feels like I am V is me, and I got to save this thing. I don't know. So, and you can imagine living on the river, man. That's the number of deer. I mean, it was a regular occurrence. And the reason why I call this story The Last Raccoon is because shortly after this story, I moved to LA and I was off the river. And so most of the wayward creatures I meet after this story, have social security numbers. It's a slightly different deal. But this day, important for you to know that it is hot. It is the hottest Minnesota summer day in years. It was like 105. And if you've been in the Midwest when it's 105, girl, this is not a dry heat. No, this is mosquito. Wet. Yeah, you're wet. You're under a blanket. The air, it's hot to breathe. The breeze, it feels like you've opened an oven. Like even the breeze is
like
hot.
A hairdryer. Yeah.
Totally. And I'm on my boat and I've got my dog and I'm thinking, God, I'm going to go down to the river. I'm going to walk down to the beach. I'm going to go for a swim because it's so hot. And I'm upstairs in my bedroom, which has these big round windows that can look, over the water onto the shore. And my dog, Dorothy, is fucking fixated on something. She's breathing hard. Her eyes are huge. Her body's rigid and she's staring out the window. And I'm looking and I'm trying to call him. Like, what is she so upset about? And I'm trying to see what she's looking. I'm looking at the shoreline and I'm thinking there's probably a snake or something scurrying around on the shoreline across the water. And I'm trying to give her treats. She's ignoring me like she is. Finally, I get her. Come on, we got to go down to the river and go for a swim. And I can barely get her away from the window. We go down to the river, we swim. It's still hot. We come back. I'm back upstairs to change. And she's boom, right back at that spot, Christine, staring and growling. Oh, growl. And it's so unusual. I finally get down on my knees next to her and I lay down next to her so that my eyes are looking exactly at the same line.
Right.
And I see that she's not looking at the shore across the water. She's looking on the boat, like on the stern of the boat. More specifically, I see she's looking in, we have like one of those 50-gallon garbage cans, those giant garbage cans, kind of bungee corded to the back of the boat. And inside, I can see the two little fuzzy ears and the little black mask and little eyes peeking up of a raccoon in that garbage can. And I'm like, and I'm feeling like, because that garbage can is jet black. It's sitting in the sun over the water in this 105-degree heat. I mean, you could boil an egg in this thing for sure. It's the seventh ring of hell kind of hot. And I'm thinking, oh no, this poor raccoon, and my empathy is fish. And I run downstairs and I open the back door and I rush over to the garbage can.
Wait, so you rush across the deck of the boat.
Exactly. I'm going to go downstairs, open the door.
The garbage can is in the water.
The garbage can is on the boat, but it's like bungee corded to the railing. So it's like it's hanging out kind of over the back. Okay. Yeah. And I'm thinking, I got to get this raccoon out of here, poor thing. And I open the door and I look in and everything below that raccoon's eyes has been ripped off.
Oh, God.
And its jaw is hanging off its face like a toenail, Christine.
Oh, God.
I can see the bones of its nostrils and a couple of back teeth sticking up from its back. And it goes.
Yeah. It hisses at you or it tries to hiss.
And I jump back and I slam the door and I'm just running in place, Christine, because I'm thinking, oh my fuck, two hot surging things are going through my body at the same time.
Yeah.
One is that was the scariest, grossest fucking thing I've ever seen.
Right.
And everybody hates zombies, but I have like a deep and like abiding fear of zombies. And that's the closest thing to a zombie I've ever fucking seen. And I'm terrified and it was gory and it was horrible. And it was horrifying. And then the other feeling surging through me is a deeper empathy than I had before because this poor fucking thing is suffering even more than I thought. It is 105 degrees, this hot, black, sun-scorched garbage can with its face hanging off. I'm like,
what in the world got to it?
I know. And I'm also secure. So I'm panicking and I'm running and I'm like, and my first thing is like, I have to like kill it or say, because I get end its suffering. You know what I mean? And I'm like, how do but the only way to like, could I push it in the water and drown it? No, because the only way to get that garbage can off is to basically stick my head inside to get no, thank you. And then and also what if it doesn't drown? What if it just swims to shore? Or what if it climbs onto the boat? Now I've got this faceless raccoon climbing and I'm calling. So I call the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center and they say, yes, we've got a guy with a van and he'll be there in 2 hours.
Ooh.
I'm like, oh, right. Oh no. And so I do everything I can do. I put shade. I rig up an umbrella with a misting.
I knew you were going to say shade. I knew it. So you rigged up an umbrella. So now the raccoon is at least shaded.
It's shaded, and I got my hose set on mist so that I could cool it down a little bit there. And I'm feeling my heart is breaking. And I'm also every once in a while, because I can't look at it because it's too scary, I would open the door and be like, it's going to be okay. Somebody's coming,
Slam the door.
Slam the door. Finally, 2 hours later, just an angel in brown. His name is Paul. He's wearing a brown button shirt, brown pants, the brown belt, brown hat. I wish this was a love story. If it didn't have to be a true story, I would have fallen in love with him. But he was just more of like a hero, And he's got a wire cage and those long pinchy tong things that they use to get animals out. And I see him. Hi, thank God you're here, And I was a little nervous for him because this is to date one of the most horrifying faces of, this creature I've ever seen. And I watch him walk over to the garbage can, and he looks in, and he says in the sweetest voice, he goes, "Hey there, guy. It looks to me like you're having a pretty terrible day." And I just, and because I was like, be careful. It's going to haunt your nightmares for the rest of your life. But he was so nice.
Because he's seen it all.
He's seen it all. And he gets the raccoon out and he puts him in the cage. And we close up the cage. And I said, "Well, do you think he'll make it?" And he said, "No." He said, "Maybe." He said, "But well, if not, we will put him down humanely."
Yeah.
And I thought, man, that is so much better than dying next to your face in a hot garbage can.
Yeah.
And it was and he took him home and the raccoon didn't make it. Of course, the raccoon didn't make it, but it was such a huge heart swell for me to find my city saw value in responding to this situation, that we took care and love, for this creature.
Compassion.
And it is the kind of compassion within a horrific situation that I have tried to take with me ever since.
Okay, so tell me about the size of the raccoon and what did it look like in the carrier or, the cage he had? And what about Dorothy? Where did you put that dog?
Dorothy, I wouldn't let Dorothy go near the door. No. You know what I mean? No way. No way.
She's going to scare it.
She's going to scare it 100%. And also it would scare everybody. I mean, this thing, and also this thing isn't well, because that was one of the things that I discussed with our savior in Brown is I was like, how do you suppose? He goes, this creature was probably very sick before it got into your garbage can. Because I'm thinking, was there a fight? Like, did two raccoons go in there and then they got into a fight? Maybe, probably. But he said this raccoon, even in its condition, should have been able to get out. Yeah. Raccoons get in and out of these things. It wasn't a dumpster, And so his prediction was that there was perhaps a rabid, some neurological, not great situation happening with this raccoon that got them in this situation to begin with. But I have no idea if it went in with a face.
Yeah, talk about the size because raccoons can get, the back of a raccoon can get like 15 inches across.
Oh, yeah. I've seen huge. This was not a huge adult raccoon, but it didn't look like a baby to me either.
Yeah.
It fit the cage. They had brought a cage for an adult raccoon and it fit the cage of an adult raccoon, but it didn't feel, particularly big or small. I got to be honest, though, that nasty ass face.
Yeah.
I can't say I've focused on much else.
But when you saw the body of it, was it like, oh, yeah, that's a body of a raccoon with that long tail. It's got the ring tail.
With the ring tail and also the top part of its face was there. So it had the mask, the little black raccoon mask around its eyes and those cute fuzzy little ears and sort of a big, it didn't look skinny or emaciated otherwise.
Yeah. It sounds like it had like a Gene Siskel problem, when you lose the bottom.
Yeah. It was really weird. And it was now the biggest creature that lived down there in the river was a beaver named Jonathan. Jonathan was fucking huge. Jonathan could have taken me. Jonathan could have lifted me up like baby at the end of Dirty Dancing.
Did you see a beaver like building a dam, with the tail, flat tail, moving mud?
Yeah. I've never seen him do that, but Jonathan he was right behind my stern and he would like break off branches from a tree.
Wow.
And then he'd like drag it down to the water and then he'd sit on his butt.
Yeah.
On that big tail, like he was in a recliner.
Resting.
And then he'd use those, retro thumbs and he would just rip the leaves off and he'd eat the leaves and he'd sort of slowly strip the branch. And when he was done, he'd put the branch down next to him and he'd wipe his hands on his belly. Wow. He'd like roll his little fingers around in his elaborate belly. And when he got scared, he'd slap his tail on the water and it sounded like somebody had overthrown, taken a boulder and thrown it in the water. But we got so used to each other. The reason I named him Jonathan is because he would just sit there and he never moved. Like he wasn't nervous about me. And in the morning, he felt so much like a regular neighbor that when I'd get off the boat to go to work, I'd just, good morning, Jonathan. And he'd sort of have a good day out there.
Yeah, that's so cute. That's so cute. And it must have been fascinating living on a houseboat in the way that it would be fascinating to live on the ocean because every single day is different. Different things are coming up and the tides are making the beach is changing. Some days I've used to go out with this guy in Malibu and some days we'd wake up and all the whole beach would be covered in rocks. And then the next morning, the whole beach is covered in sand. Just like, holy shit, that just happened in front of me. So that must have been similar when you're on a houseboat because there's so much life around you.
Yeah. And, it's twofold because a river, and one of the reasons I love rivers and why I love the Mississippi River is because oceans, I think, create the illusion for human beings like they're at the center. Because when you stand on a beach, it feels like the waves are all coming to your feet. Right. And everything is going from out there to you as like the singular point. And that's amazing. It's one of the things I love about the ocean. When you're on the river, it's going past you. Rivers never stop. It's coming from there and it's going to there. And it's like somebody has a book open in front of you and they're flipping the pages and you can maybe read a portion or a paragraph. But when you walk away, those pages keep flipping.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
That's powerful.
And when you live on a river, and I lived, like I said, almost a decade, you start to feel a real pull to follow it. Like a real, every pair of sunglasses I've dropped, every leaf that's landed has gone that way. Yeah. And you start to feel like, I got to go that way. Wow. Like I'm literally pulled. And it's part of the reason why before I moved to LA, I just did that trip. Had to unhook my boat and go that way because the river pulls you.
Because the Mississippi starts in Minnesota.
Yes, and ends in the Gulf of Mexico, of course. So I took the whole motherfucking
And what is the headwaters like in Minnesota? Are we talking about little streams come down? I mean, what does that look like?
Oh, I highly recommend if you find yourself in Minnesota, go up north to Itasca.
How do you spell that?
Because Itasca.
Never saw that word.
Itasca and the Mississippi River does start with a trickle and you can stand astride it and let it go between your legs. And then it's rocky and difficult to navigate and unruly until it gets to Minneapolis, St. Paul. And that's where what we call the head of navigation starts. That's where the first lock and dam are.
Yeah.
And between lock and dam number 1, then they're numbered down to like 27 or something, down to Cairo, Illinois, which is spelled like Cairo, but they pronounce it Cairo. And then when you get to Cairo, there's a split. And you can either stay on the Mississippi River all the way down to the ocean, and there are no more locks and dams. Yeah. It's just, you could do it in a barrel. It's just this wide open highway of water. Or you can hang a left and go up the Ohio River and then the Tennessee Tom Bigby Waterway, which is called the 10 Tom. And that's sort of a pleasure craft, easily more navigated channel with locks and dams and gas stations and stuff like that. And then that river runs parallel to the Mississippi until it empties out in Mobile Bay.
Mobile Bay, Alabama. Wait, Mobile Bay.
That's right. Mobile Bay. Mobile Bay, Alabama, baby. And then when you get through Mobile Bay, if you go all the way across the bay, which we did, we started the trip with trout, and we ended it with dolphins.
Oh my gosh.
So we went across Mobile Bay to, at the end of Mobile Bay, there's like these two peninsulas. There's Dauphin Island, and the Dog River. And once you go past that, you're in the Intercoastal Highway.
Right.
And if you hang a left, you go to Florida. And if you hang a right, you go to New Orleans. Wow.
It's just
fucking
fascinating.
Nuts,
it really is. You've got so much knowledge. You know what you need to do at some point? And I know there's so much going on, a lot of stuff to do, a lot of boxes to check. But here's something you really need to do. You need to be a speaker on one of these bigger cruise lines. You know, the really big ones like Regent or Crystal, the ones that are very high end. Because people on those ships, they want to learn. They want to learn about where they're going, what they're going to see. They want to see the lectures and the slideshows. You would be so good at that. Oh my gosh.
Oh, what a dream job.
Well, you could do it too. And once you get hooked up with a friend of mine used to do this. Once you get hooked up with one cruise line, they could book you 2, 3, 4 times a year. And then, you go there. Like for you, doing the Mediterranean would be just completely right up your alley because you could talk about Vesuvius.
Oh my God, honestly, honey, I'm writing this down.
With your knowledge, with the show that you have to show the people at the cruise line that you do know your stuff. You are a history major. You are a public speaker, and you have this knowledge. They'd hire you, man. I'm telling you.
You know what? I'll tell you too. There's one of my favorite credits that we missed. I am a talking head on the History Channel.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I fucking love this job, Christine. You know how you watch the History Channel and they cut away to historians saying things like, well, Mount Vesuvius was blah, blah, blah. And I'm one of them. So I'm on 2 shows. I'm on a show called Crazy Rich Ancients.
Funny.
Which is all about how rich people throughout history have spent their gads and gads of unsubstantiated wealth. And then my second show is called History's Greatest Mysteries, which is hosted by Lawrence Fishburne. And I give my 2 cents on 1,000 topics. It is such a dream. I love it so much.
Such an original. You're very original. You're very bright. I'm telling you, and you're putting it out there. You can feel your passion when you talk about history, and you've traveled it. You've walked the walk. I mean, it's just great. I'm so happy for you. You've carved out a niche. You've really carved out a niche. And I don't know any other comedians that even have a smidgen of your knowledge.
Oh, Christine, thank you so much. And this fandom is mutual, man. I mean, this podcast, Storyworthy, get the fuck out of here. 14 years, sister. I've been doing Hill for 2 years. I'm a baby. I'm learning. You have brought me along, and you've had me as a guest. I mean, what you're doing in the world of podcasting and storytelling is really valuable. I hope you look in the mirror and are able to give yourself some of this love that you dispense so generously.
Well, I know that I have a passion for it. I have a passion for the game show. I have a passion for the other podcasts. Like, I'm not doing anything that I don't want to. Right. So that's that. And that's the same with HILF. And it shows, it really, I think people can hear that in our voices that we want.
Yeah. My toes get all curled up. Right. My toes are all curled up. My shoes. I just love it.
I know. I get like goosebumps on my arms and legs because it is interesting to just learn. It doesn't always have to be about me. I want to learn these stories. I want to have more knowledge. Yeah. You can't teach yourself stuff you already know. You got to learn.
Yeah. Well, you never know, because at risk of sounding spiritual and hokey, I believe that there's something in the universe. Our passions and our wants are more than just flippant silliness. I think they are the important moves in chemistry of humanity. And one of the things I think of is John Adams, for example, a founding father, and he defended the perpetrators of the Boston Massacre, which is fascinating because, they fired on American citizens. They killed American citizens in the lead up to the Revolutionary War. And we were gunning for a fight and we were looking for injustice. And there was something about John Adams defending the perpetrators of the Boston Massacre that made America look so benevolent and reasoned, that we aren't just these crazy, rabble savages who just want to like buck the king, that we are trying to institute a system of laws and things. And it really established America. And there's a point years before this that John Adams writes in his diary. He's spending all night reading history. He's spending all night crunching the books on law, and he's not making money from it. And he's not spending time with his kids and his wife. And it's really frustrating him. And he writes in his diary, like, why the fuck am I spending so much time learning about law and reason? Why am I doing this? I'm pissing everybody off. Why am I doing this? And I remember reading that and yelling into my book, because you have to be John Adams. Because you don't know the swell of history that's coming your way, buddy, but you need to be John Adams, and history will call out for a moment in which you are prepared, and you then must just be prepared. And I think so many of us go, why am I being so nice to my kid? Why am I pulling over to save this stupid, ugly animal in the middle of the freeway? And you never know, because you are a part of a big old ball of yarn.
Bigger. Yeah.
Did
you read the John Adams book?
Yes.
Do you just read like voraciously?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm usually reading
on Kindle.
I'm often reading a book and listening to a book at the same time. So when I can sit and read, I have something to pull out of my bag and read. And when I'm driving or cleaning and want to be reading but can't, then I have a book in my ear. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing about health that's so fun is you do give your sources. And I think that's important. You're not just pulling this information out of your eyes.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, thank you so much for coming on, Dawn. You are just a fascinating person. I'm really glad I know you.
Oh, likewise, Christine. Thank you for having me.
All right, you guys, this has been another really good episode of Storyworthy. Thank you so much for listening. If you guys weren't listening, this show wouldn't be happening. So it's all about the listener. Thank you so much. Don't forget, you can always email me at christineblackburn1@gmail.com. How about that? And don't forget to check out My Life in 3 Songs, mylifein3songs.com, and it's over there on Spotify. All right, you guys, thank you again so much for tuning in. And on behalf of the very talented Don Brodey, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Christine Blackburn, saying, make it a story-worthy week.
Thanks for joining us on the Storyworthy podcast. We'll be back next week with all new stories. Subscribe to Storyworthy on iTunes and visit the Storyworthy website at storyworthypodcast.com.
Hey, Mike. Glad you could join me for some great seafood.
Me too.
Wait, why are you dressed in fishing gear?
You said we were going out to catch great seafood, right?
Yes, to Popeyes. Do you even know how to fish?
No, I thought you did.
Oh, yeah, I can catch pretty good seafood at Popeyes. Let's go.
Let Popeyes do the fishing while you enjoy our delicious signature seafood. Get Popeyes flounder fish sandwich or shrimp tackle box before they're gone. Limited time at participating U.S. restaurants.
Excited for a road trip? Start it off right with auto coverage from American Family Insurance. J.D. Power ranked us #1 in customer satisfaction with the auto insurance shopping experience among mid-size insurers. Get a quote at amfam.com.
American Family Insurance.
For J.D. Power 2021 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. American Family Mutual Insurance Company, SI and its operating companies, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.